So we're going to be looking at how we can stretch ourselves, our blended learning delivery from good to great, how we can elevate what we do in this online, offline, blended type approach. What does this mean going forwards? What does the word hybrid mean when it comes to learning, and how we can really make sure we're delivering a great online, offline, blended hybrid, there's another word for us, apprenticeship learning experience for our apprentices. And what we're really looking today is to get some insights from you guys, as well as some of the insights that Brad and I are going to share today as well. So altogether, we're going to look at learning how we train across multiple channels to maximize that opportunity that we've got going forwards. We've all had a crazy 18 months, so let's look at those learns that we've brought forward with us. So just to introduce myself, my name's Erica Farmer. I'm an apprenticeship expert. I run a digital learning consultancy called Welcome to Learning Limited. What Welcome to does is it runs to work with apprenticeship providers like yourselves, corporate learning and development departments, to save you time and money and effort when it comes to digitizing your learning. I've got 20 years corporate learning and development experience with some of the UK's largest brands, such as British Gas, Specsavers, LV, Virgin, and I did chair the customer service trailblazer during my time at British Gas. I live in the West Country in Devon. Already pointed, we've got quite a lot of Devonians, West Country folk on the call today, which is great, with my two little pugs, Pepper and Daisy, and I'm now going to hand you over to Brad for his introduction as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Brad Tombling, Customer Success Director at Bud Systems. I've been in the training sector just over a decade myself, and I've delivered both in independent training providers and been involved with FE colleges. My role really at Bud Systems, which is a platform, an EdTech platform that's specialised in training delivery, is to help make sure all of our customers maximise the benefits of using a platform that can help with things like remote delivery, digital delivery, blended learning, to basically increase more engagement with learners and drive better outcomes as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brad. Okay, really pleased to be here. Guys, if you are asking some questions in the Q&A, that's great, but I'm going to ask you to move over to the chat if that's okay, just so we can really get some great interaction going. So I'm really interested in your thoughts in the session today, so do share them in the chat. We're going to be running some interactive exercises for you as well. So my challenge to you, don't just ping back. We've had this crazy 18 months of kind of getting to that good enough space. How do we get onto Zoom? How do we get onto Teams? How do we digitize our learning that we're going to talk about a little bit later? How do we install our or make the most of our e-portfolio system, our learning management system, to make sure that our learners continue to have a fantastic experience? And how can we take what we've learned over the last 12 to 18 months and really start to move to our good enough space? So my challenge to you today is it's time to move away from good enough and move towards great. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What does that mean? So I'm interested in your thoughts, guys, in the chat. What does good enough mean to you? What have you done over the last 12 to 18 months that's got you to good enough when it comes to blended learning? Just give me your thoughts in the chat. It'd be great to see your interventions, your change, what you guys have been up to over the last couple of months, because we need to think about things differently. We need to have a different mindset, because we've been through a real volatile time recently. That kind of, probably heard the term VUCA before. Volatile, it's been really uncertain. What way do we turn? Is it left or right? What does online learning mean? Can apprentices learn on furlough? That was one of the things that came through quite quickly. What does this mean in a complex environment where some people are working at home, some people are working still in the workplace because they have to? Yeah, Sarah says moving away just from slides, using different tools, using different types of information. Hayley says individualizing approaches to blended learning, catering for apprentice needs. Sarah, Mural, Padlet. Yeah, what other tools are you guys currently using? Stick that in the chat for me as well. That would be great to hear. Death by PowerPoint, collaborative tools, yeah. And by the way, Death by PowerPoint isn't loads of slides. I'm going to say that now. What Death by PowerPoint is not employing a scientific approach behind your slides or behind your design of your learning materials. Who wants to see a load of text and bullet points on slides, right? Certainly not me. Francis moved all of the initial police recruit training online. Fantastic, love that, except for personal safety and first aid. There's some things you can smash online, there's other things where sometimes it might need a little bit of it. And that's that blended approach that we're talking about today. Okay, keep it coming, guys, keep it coming. Some really great stuff here. We know it's been a hugely ambiguous time. No one gave us a operations manual to say this is how you run apprenticeship learning in the middle of a pandemic. That just didn't apply. So we've had to really, I think the term is pivot, that people have used quite a lot over the last couple of months. We've had to pivot our delivery models and our learning approaches and our design methodology to make sure we're meeting the needs of our learners going forwards. Sonia says using Google Meet to engage remote learners. Love that. Fantastic. Moved lessons to Teams. Interaction's been good, supported with online resources. Google Classroom, Jamboard. We might be visiting Jamboard a little bit later for you, Carl. So being an expert there, be good to see. So again, keep telling me, guys, really interested. What has changed for you? Pop it in the chat for me. What has changed for you? Really, really interested in this. What has changed for you? Also, what you'll notice in the chat box is that we've got a little poll section that sits next to chat. So I'm also going to ask you to respond to this poll for me. So just click on polls and then click on what has changed most for you, because you can't click various options, but what has changed most for you in the poll as we go through today's session as well. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to do that. Brilliant, absolutely, some good. So cameras on, Jodie says. And what happens when we've got safeguarding issues? What happens when we've got learners that don't want to have their cameras on? It's making sure our tutors and our trainers are aware of all the tools and all the choices that they can make as well. So that's a great one, Jodie, so thank you. Hayley says, I've had more engagement from learners and learners having their cameras on more. Yeah, absolutely. It's been this journey that we've gone through over the last couple of months, isn't it? Keep sharing in the chat, guys. Remember, keep going into the poll and select your answer there as well. So thinking about that VUCA approach, that kind of, it's been variable, it's been uncertain, it's been changeable, it's been ambiguous. Thinking about you and your teams now, how hardy have you become? How resilient have you become? And again, I'm interested in you to share your strategies in the chat, because we've all had to, you hear the term resilient quite a lot. We've had to become more resilient. We've had to think differently. We've had to engage in different ways. And it's not just a case of putting everything on e-learning, putting everything on Zoom, putting everything on Teams. It's also supporting our whole methodology, our people, our culture, how are we supporting our tutors and trainers if they're not out on the road, if they're working at home all the time. So how are you more hardy? That's what I'm really interested in hearing from you. So again, just share that in the chat for me now. And you know what? If you can't wait to go back to in person, my challenge to you is perhaps you don't understand digital enough. You don't understand what the possibilities are. Don't just ping back. This is what we keep talking about. Jodie, it's okay to make mistakes and have tech issues. Absolutely. We are not perfect. This is new to everybody. And we can put all of the governance in them, and that's really important stuff as well. But that's why it's so important to have and invest in good ed tech and good learning tech, and also the methodology to use that tech as well. Fran says costs, logistics, less of a problem in a large force like Devon and Cornwall. Brilliant, great to hear that. Yeah, brilliant. So I'm asking you to do something great after the session today. I'm asking you to take one thing away that's going to shift in your organization. I'm going to ask you to make a shift towards great online learning and not just good enough online learning. That's what I'm asking you today. So let's rephrase our VUCA, our challenges, our ambiguity. Let's have some more vision. What does great ed tech and learning tech look like in your organization? How do your people understand on how to use it? Do they understand the BEF methodology, the pedagogy, the learning? How does that land with your learners in regards to the impact that they're having? Have you trained your teams to deliver and design great online learning, to use the platforms they're working with, to really get the most out of that for your ongoing delivery? And have you thought in an agile way in regards to what that means? Because again, this is what Ofsted will be interested with either a new monitoring visit or a full visit. This is where some of the focus is going to be. And believe me and you, I work with plenty of providers and they've been through kind of really understanding what that means and how to articulate that. Lester says we've dramatically cut our carbon emissions. Love that, Lester, to keep telling the staff about it to motivate it. Yeah, we'll talk about Gen Z a little bit in a minute because that's really important generally to that generation as well. So I love that as well. But we know learning tech is moving quickly. You know, we're already behind the curve in terms of technical skills. We're about 5 years behind in regards to the workforce. You know, we're already talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and we know that blended is where it's at. So Brad, over to you. What's kind of your thoughts in regards to learning tech and where we are at the moment?
I mean, just picking up on what you said there, Erica, it's massive. And looking at the comments that came flooding in there, look at the breadth and depth of platforms people are using, whether it's Teams and Zoom, which is probably a two-way race a while back. You're seeing lots there around Google, there's Nearpods, there's Peer Deck, there's huge amounts of technology out there to support everyone delivering more remotely, more digitally. And for me, just picking up on things you said there, Erica, around AI, ML, augmented reality, virtual reality, some of those things seemed a bit scary not too long ago. I remember looking into virtual reality and augmented reality and seeing just a big barrier. You know, you had this huge expensive headset that you had to put on to engage with it. And I was blown away a few weeks ago when I attended a session with a supplier of augmented reality. And they said, Brad, get your phone, scan this QR code. And I scanned this QR code and it was something specific around electrical components, but I've seen it also in fire services, I've seen it in medical scenarios as well, where I scanned it with my phone, no headset, nothing like that. And actually in front of me on the desk, what appeared to be on the desk at least anyway through my phone, was all of the components for me to analyze, look, feel, and complete these basic learning and competence tasks before the theory was, before you went and did it in a real scenario where there was some risk that was associated. So that's just, I guess, one of many, many examples that I've seen recently in those four areas. I think you've probably had some experience of that with your time at British Gas, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on, absolutely. So I was at British Gas probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and at that point we were working with virtual reality and augmented reality learning companies to allow our engineering apprentices to hypothetically go into a client's home and blow up a boiler without actually going into a client's home and boil, because we didn't want that, you know, for obvious reasons. But again, this stuff is so important from an experiential perspective, particularly, you know, if we're ever in the space where, you know, we can't go back into that in-person position again, that hardiness that we talked about earlier, that resilience and having that technology ready to deploy, and not just to kind of keep us going, but actually, I know you like to talk about digital transformation quite a lot. You know, how do we actually purely transform our learning delivery? It's not just a buzzword, is it? It actually means quality, output, retention, outcomes.
Yeah, I can agree more, Eric. And I think the term digital transformation is probably one of the most misunderstood ones that's used so often in this space. And I would always, whenever I have a conversation with a client around this, I always reinforce there is no right or wrong, it's just opportunity. But what I see actually is many organisations have gone through digital transformation to support them in a better way of working. That's innovated, more efficient. There's been some of the benefits we've seen there in the chat as well, whether that's carbon emissions, whether that's more one-to-one engagement, more frequently with learners, tailoring to their individual needs. There's a breadth of areas there. But where it's most misunderstood is actually it's used interchangeably with two other concepts. So you have digitization, which is effectively conversion. You're converting a paper process onto a digital one. So you're taking your review form and you're making it onto a Word document. That's one step. And yes, there's going to be some improvements. There'll probably be marginal though. There won't be fully transformative. The digitalization builds upon that conversion, and actually you get process improvements. And there was one of the attendees here in the chat that had mentioned they're using Sway, Flow, all of those great things that Microsoft are pushing at the minute, which actually is improving the process. So what was maybe just a form, it now has several actions off the back of it. So, somebody gets notified by email, it's complete. The data goes into immediate reports. It's given some process benefits. And then you have digital transformation, which is completely innovating different ways of working. It might even be redefining the task completely to a point where it's actually completely, you don't even recognize it. I guess they give an example of that, a word assignment. What was paper written, digitization, you did it on a word processor. Then you did it on a word processor which had some business process, which told the trainer, told the tutor that it had been submitted. There was some automated marking in it maybe. And then digital transformation, actually that task, which was once a fairly straightforward written assignment, becomes a collaborative effort with peers across the UK, maybe even globally, where they have a conversation, they put together a podcast and they upload that to a website. More immersive, more engaging, using a range of skills. That is also really, really relevant to the digital space today.
Love that. Love that. And we talk about Bloom's taxonomy all the time, don't we, in apprenticeships? But what you're talking about, Brad, is Bloom's digital taxonomy, which is that code, create, blog, podcast, all of that digital piece. I love that. I think you're absolutely spot on with that, and it ties in, and thanks for teeing me up to my next slide. It ties in really nicely about some information around some of the information that's coming out recently around how are people generally operating off the back of COVID, this remote working, this hybrid working. How many times have you phoned a call center or a business in the last couple of months or the last year and they've said, oh, sorry, normally it would be 7 days, but because of COVID, it's now 21 days or something like that. It's because they're still paper-based. It's because they haven't done exactly what you've just been talking about in terms of mindset and thought process. And we need to be exactly in that space. So this is an outcome from HSBC, one of their recent workforce surveys. 85% of the workforce are demanding a new flexible work schedule. People want to be really clear on where they work and when they work and how they choose to work. And this is tying in with our diversity conversations that we're having at the moment and our opening up our talent pool conversations to a more global talent point rather than. And someone sitting in the West Country like me in Exeter, I've been very lucky to have some big roles that have allowed me to stay in the West Country. But there's a lot of roles that I have had conversations about, director, head of L&D roles, when I had to have been based in London, for example. So, what does that mean in terms of our overall mindset when it comes to the workforce and learning? Again, any challenges or thoughts or reflection, guys, that you've got on any of this that we're talking about today, please do stick it into the chat. And don't forget, we've got a poll that's running throughout the session, which will provide you the results too as well. So let's just think about the types of people who are interested in apprenticeships, the types of people we're engaging in. Typically, let's focus on that Generation Z, that kind of generation that's coming into the workplace right now, people who are interested in, and I think Lester was talking about this earlier, what's my impact on the world? What's my carbon footprint? As an organisation, as a potential employer, what are your mission, vision and values? So it's not about you interviewing me anymore on my competencies. It's about me assessing whether you're the right organisation and employer for me. And that's why I joke on the slide there to say it's the most disloyal generation as yet, because we know the new generations coming into the workforce will be assessing the individual employers that they're working for and the types of organisations and suppliers that they have, like you guys. They'll be wanting content that's accessible where and when they want to consume it. So long gone are the days of the 1 day a week out on apprenticeships that we used to see. And it's important for these individuals to be motivated by what they really value. It's far more than money. So the apprentices, the majority of the young apprentices that you'll be working for at the moment, want to understand things around purpose. They want to understand things around what does this mean to our climate and the world that we live in today? What does this mean around how do you treat your people when it comes to well-being? And how do you collaborate internally, but more important, externally? And if you think about all the stuff that Brad and I have just been talking about, this is effectively what we're talking about is engagement. We need to be really turning up the dial when it comes to engagement in the digital world because of all the challenges that we know and what we've expected over the last 18 months. We know there's challenges around mental health. We know there's challenges around people unable to access digital content, machines, laptops, phones, iPads. So it's important to recognize that we have to level everything up, and this is where digital skills come in. So what we're going to do is share with you in a minute the most recent output of the World Economic Forum, and it's called the Future of Jobs Report, and we're just going to pop the link to that in the chat for you shortly, because interestingly, 8 out of the 10 top skills required according to the World Economic Forum in the next 10 years, and I actually think that's the next 5 years personally, are digital. And this is how you can really, really role model this as a provider, a college, an employer, if you've got your own apprentices. So what I'm going to do now is an exercise called a chat, hold and send. And the next question that comes up on the slide, I'd like you to rank yourself or your organization's preparedness around the next 10 years around digital skills. So I want you to put a 0 if you're just not ready at all. I want you to put a 10 if you're absolutely smashing out the park right now. So just write a number that represents your preparedness of where you are at the moment. How prepared are you? Okay, once you've done that, I'm going to count to 3 and I'd like you to hit return. And this is where all the numbers should pop up on the screen. 1, 2, 3. Okay, here we go. Let's see, let's get some numbers in right now. So we've got a 6, we've got a 7, we've got a 6, we've got another 7. Okay, so we're fairly high. We're hedging our bets. We're past the 5, but we're not quite at an 8. Here we've got a couple of 8s coming in. That's brilliant as well. Okay, so let's think about what do we need to do now to be able to meet those goals around purpose, those goals around climate, the types of generations that we're seeing coming into apprenticeships right now. What do we need to do for our learning strategy to meet those goals? And that's what I want you to think about right now. So in a interactive online learning methodology way, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Teach me and I tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to put, or Brad's going to kindly put a link into what's called Jamboard. We're not going to do it quite yet because you guys will all go there and you won't get the instructions that I'm about to tell you. But it's going to take you to a separate browser, the link that comes into the chat. And I'm going to show you what it's going to look like. Okay, here we go. So this is what the Jamboard is going to look like when you click on the link. And what I'd like you to do is think about your organization. How does your learning strategy support all the goals that we've talked about today? Digitization, Gen Z, climate, interactivity, engagement. I want you to go onto the link in a second, and I'd like you to click a sticky note. And if you click on the sticky note, you'll notice that you can type on the sticky note, and I'd like you to click save. And what I'd really like us to do is fill up this Jamboard, this interactive whiteboard. I'd like us to fill up with all of the things that you're doing to meet those goals at the moment. So let's go for that now. So Brad, if you wouldn't mind just popping the link into the chat for me.
Of course. 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So guys, just click. Oh, go for it.
I don't know if you've seen, Erica, I was about to say, we're going to make quite a few people happy with Jamboards because it's been mentioned a few times earlier, but also we definitely need to speak with Nicola at 9 out of 10 in the Excel we did a second ago.
Brilliant, Nicola. We'd like to get your insights then in regards to what makes up that 9 out of 10. Share all your insights and your expertise for the benefit of the group. That would be amazing, and great to see that you're a 9 out of 10. And thank you, everybody, for responding to that exercise as well. So you can see on the Jamboard that we're starting to get some little animals at the top. What I'd like you to do, just click on that sticky note for me and just start typing on the sticky note. So just do that for me now. And people are like, oh, this is exciting. I'm going to start drawing on the whiteboard.
this is the risk with it, isn't it, Erica?
Yeah, this is the inner child coming out. Absolutely, absolutely. But what I'd like you to do, guys, once you get into the Jamboard, just click on the sticky note. So that's the, you'll see on the left-hand side, it's the 4th option down on your annotate bar. It's the little box. Just click on that. It will bring up a sticky note. Type on the sticky notes. You can see we've got one up on there already, blended approach. How does your learning strategy support these goals? That's what I'm interested in right now. So let's get as much as, what are you doing to meet the needs that we talked about as part of this session today? Here we go. Okay. Adopting intuitive to use technology, so minimal training on the tech is required. Oh, I like that. Okay, good stuff. Hybrid learning environment. Okay, good. So that is an environment that allows us to teach in person and also online. And that is a whole different skill set for our tutors and trainers. So don't forget this. We need to be investing in our people to make sure they've got the skills to be able to do this as well. We have an internal user focus group to keep the ideas flowing and the momentum moving forwards. Love that. Collaboration is key, right? Employer discussions around blended learning. Yeah, if you've got some fantastic L&D teams that you're working with, you know, what are they doing? What kind of thoughts and reflections and learning are they doing around blended learning? Okay, teaching methodology to include engagement, multiple consolidation opportunities. Love that hybrid approach to teaching and learning. A mixture of online blended and hybrid delivery models. Yeah, hybrid is the word of the week at the moment. I drove a hybrid car yesterday and all I talk about is hybrid learning at the moment. So, but there's something in that tells us where our, you know, globally, I suppose, where our mindset is on this stuff. Researching amongst the learner base to find out the methods they prefer. Love that. Student reps, feedback on what works well, what could be even better. Brilliant. Extensive digital CPD. That for me, I can't see who's written these because you just come up as a little anonymous animal. But that for me is a #1. CPD support for staff and learners. Absolutely, I think that's brilliant. Digital strategy groups across the college to develop and identify systems which we can adopt to support learning. Love that. Digital skills strategy. If you don't have a digital skills strategy, now is the time. I love that. CPD on engagement, emulating existing pedagogies online. And don't forget, it is slightly different. So your teaching in person is different to your teaching online. So just be aware of that. How are you blending your synchronous and asynchronous? How are you blending the learning on your portal, your e-portfolio, your learning experience platform, your learning management platform as part of your whole delivery methodology? Some really amazing stuff. Brad, is there anything that pops out to you on what's been shared so far?
I mean, the CPD one is critical, and actually I teed you up earlier. I think that tees me up quite nicely for one of my closing slides. But I mean, there's a massive shared theme here, isn't there, around that hybrid approach. And I guess what you and I both agree on, Erica, is blended learning is here to stay. Remote learning is a critical part of that. What we're not saying is it completely replaces something like face-to-face. I don't personally think it ever will, but it absolutely is part of that blended approach for all the benefits that the attendees here have, you know, kindly shared in the chat as well.
Yeah, some really Perfect stuff. Guys, if you want to take a screen print of that or a download of that, feel free to do that as well. There's some really great stuff that's coming back on board that you've shared today. So thank you so much. Brilliant. Great thoughts. Great thoughts. Okay, what I'm going to unfortunately ask you to do now is just close down that browser and come back into the session. I know that's the hardest part for people. It's like, this bit's so much fun. So yeah, just close down that browser for me so I can see you coming back into it. Yeah, love a bit of Jamboard, Joe. Do you know, it's completely free. It's just part of the Google suite. Again, I'm not on commission with any of this stuff. Feels like I am sometimes, but yeah, if you're not using things like Poll Everywhere, Jamboard, Mentimeter, Slido, Miro, then definitely get out there and get involved in this stuff. Thank you so much, guys. Do come back into the chat, and let me just go back to our slides and where we started off from the beginning, really. So we're seeing a lot more flipped classroom, a lot more platforms and tech, which is what we've kind of really been talking about today. Let's step away from that chalk and talk, that lecture style, that tell style. That's long gone. It's not engaging. It's not interesting. Not to say that there isn't a place for in-person, because there absolutely is. Graphics and pictures. Let's start benchmarking. Oh, there's just a little bit of background noise. Let's start. Oh, it might be you, Brad. Do you mind just popping yourself on mute for a second? I've just got a bit of background noise. Perfect, thank you. Let's start anchoring our key learning outcomes in regards to the information that we're using. Let's use things like the picture superiority effect. Well, we know that people learn more visually than they do from reading a load of information and bullet points all the time, particularly on things like slides. Let's make sure we've got data and evidence, information that's backing all of this up. Do you know where all your learners are? Do you know the innovation of the learning that's been taking place? Or are you just drawing down against the levy or drawing down against the pot every month without being really clear about that? And of course, Brad talked a lot about digitization. You know, your learning strategy should sit hand in hand with what Brad was talking about earlier. It's not just typing something up on a Word document, but it's making sure you've got the whole flow of information that's happening for your tutors and your trainers as well. Making sure that you're really clear in terms of the strategy and the outcomes that you've talked about and all the great stuff that you've put on the Jamboard as well. So we're coming to the end of our session. I know we're coming up to 2 o'clock, which is our finishing time. But our final Jerry's final thoughts, as it were, with this, don't just ping back. And from what you guys have shared today, there's some fantastic practice that's already happening, and continue to accelerate that, continue to build, continue to measure, test and learn, continue to get into your next steps. What's next? How else can you really start to drive those outcomes and provide that wonderful learning experience? Brad, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this framework, build, measure, learn. It's been established for a long time now, mainly around continuously improving products and services. It was the main focus actually of one of the top selling books by Eric Ries, The Lean Startup. And it really does relate to that message of don't just ping back that you've kind of hammered home today, Erica. For me, it just encapsulates that you will iterate. You know, there is a danger at the end of this period where remote learning has become the norm as opposed to the exception to the rule, where people do just ping back because, we did that before. This build, measure, learn is something I would implore everyone to continuously think about. You will typically have ideas in your curriculum around activities to make things new, more engaging, whether that's Jamboard, whether that's breakout rooms on Teams, or all the other great tech that has been talked about in the chat today. You'll build those components. You then will have a chance to run them with your learners, and typically you would utilize or leverage something like an LMS, a VLE, an end-to-end solution to be able to measure, you know, have they done it? How did they do? And then you will get the outputs, which is the data. And that data, that's the thing that will give people actionable insights to say, did this really meet my expectations? You know, was Jamboard fantastic? Did we get all the people we wanted on there adding ideas? Or did people drop off? And that's where the learnings come in. And it's that continuous iteration that goes round and round and round. It's not just a case of, which I see happen quite a lot, and I think I cover this in the next slide, Erica. It links back to that digital transformation item I spoke about earlier, is I always push people, process, tech. There is an inherent ability for people that go, oh, I've tried Zoom and it just didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't do the things I wanted to. It's the tech's fault. Or Teams was rubbish. And we see that they go, both of those products, you know, really well known, they go for that build, measure, learn. Before the pandemic, Teams had a shell of what it has today. You know, they didn't have breakout rooms. They didn't have emoticons. They didn't do half the things they do today to make it more interactive, make it more engaging, where it's a step up and it's not just good enough, it's going to great. And for me, it's the people, process, tech, where people actually take that time to step back and look and see how successful was that activity, how successful was the curriculum, how successful is our remote delivery in this piece. What did we learn from it and how can we adapt it? Because quite often people will go to the tech didn't work. Well, actually, we've seen it on the Jamboard, which is why my eyes went straight to it. How was the CPD? How was the people change management, the training, the ongoing continual professional development of them, the buy-in from the start of that change project? What about the process? You know, Zoom platforms, Jamboard, who sets those things up? We've talked about engagement today, and yes, learner engagement, intuitive design, you know, they're all things that they're craving, and I'm certainly seeing more of a push for from our clients and prospects as well. What it doesn't stop at though is how intuitive is it for your users, the internal staff, the people that are using it day to day, setting it up, because we quite quickly think about the learners, how was it for them? What about the people that have got to go through all the other bits behind the scenes? Because it needs to be just as engaging for them. And that process is a key part. And then, of course, the tech needs to stand up to it as well. Just a small sign off from me. But before I do, this is the last chance for everyone who is on the call to go to the chat section. Next to the chat icon at the top, there is a poll. If you haven't cast your vote already, cast it and you can see where other people have cast theirs. It's great for Erica and I, and it's been really lovely to read some of the comments that have come in today. That kind of echoes the interactiveness of this session. If anyone wants to have a chat with Bud around learning management systems, around some of the things that are on screen now, we have some physical people manning the digital stands. So if you want to pop in and have a chat with them, they'll be more than happy to talk you through what our product can do, and also you get a nice, neat digital goodie bag as well. But for me, a sincere thank you for everyone's participation, both in the chat, the Jamboard, the poll, and to you, Erica.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad, and thank you everybody at Bud, and thank you everybody who has engaged. You know, thank you so much. It was lovely reading Sonia's comment, the first interaction session at the conference. Woohoo! And we are joking. You know, my organisation is trained probably well over 500 tutors and trainers and consultants and assessors around interactive online learning, and every single time they come out and say, gosh, I wish we had this 18 months ago. I wish we were as confident with our, you know, our online live as we are with our asynchronous, as we are with our e-portfolio. You know, don't be afraid and don't assume that people know what they know, you know, because they don't. It's different. It's a different methodology. It's a different mindset. Thank you everybody at Bud for asking me to support you guys on this. It's been brilliant. Thank you for co-piloting, Brad. Appreciate that as well. Thank you everybody for joining us. Just on the tech point, a couple of QR codes just coming up on the screen now. If you do want to hover your phone over the 2 QR codes that are coming up, this is the Welcome To QR code that will take you to the website. I'll just leave that up there for a couple of seconds. I'll move on to the Bud QR code, and Brad's going to kindly put our email addresses into the chat as well. So if you've got any questions or queries on anything that we've covered today, or anything else that you would like to cover, anything else you're interested in when it comes to great online learning, don't ping back. Let's move away from good enough and let's get to great, and let's all work together for a great learning experience. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully hear from you soon, and have a great rest of the conference. Thank you.